The Order 1886. It launched on February 20th of 2015 and was lauded for amazing visuals, immersive world building, and some of the best ambiance of any new IP in PlayStation history. But you see, there's one little bitty problem, which was that the game was freakishly short for how much they were charging for it. And if we look on howlongtobeat.com, we can actually see that the main story, on average, out of 500 plus people that they polled, takes roughly 7 hours to complete. Main story and extra content 8.5 hours. And if you're a completionist, you might get 10 hours out of the game if you're really lucky. Now, this game has come up in discussions time and time again over the last 7 years, because every time that a new game launches for full price at $60, $70, whether you look at Resident Evil 8 or something like The Last of Us Part 1 remake, remaster, whatever, people are constantly comparing it to other games that have released in the past that people either made excuses for or dismissed out of hand. And The Order 1886 was one such game that was dismissed out of hand and not really given the time of day. Because again, this type of thing comes down to value proposition. They are offering you a product for a set price. It is up to you to decide whether or not that price and the product are congruent. And you can inform these decisions with reviews and preview events that you see. And if there's a demo for the game, if by some miracle that happens, then you could play the demo and see what you think of that. But at the end of the day, most of this just comes down to personal preference. If you're willing to pay more for a smaller, shorter experience, so long as it's high quality, so long as it's memorable, blah, blah, blah. Now, I don't inherently have a problem with spending a large chunk of change in exchange for a game that's much more lean and focuses on quality over quantity. And as you can see, that was really the priority with this game. Yes, this is rendering in real time off of what was PlayStation 4 hardware. I'm playing on the PS5. But this ran on the PS4. Without a doubt, the priority here was graphical fidelity, was world building, and building out the ambiance contained within this world. And it really did a remarkable job. I mean, Ready at Dawn, the developers of this game, had their work cut out for them, but they really came home and nailed it. I mean, there is no game from this period in PlayStation history that looks this good. And there's a couple of tricks that they're using to pull this off that you might have picked up on, such as the very tight aspect ratio. That is a cinematic aspect ratio that makes it look more like a film, but it also reduces the number of pixels they have to render for every given frame. It's a very sneaky and clever way of reducing the load on the engine, but it works really, really well, and you don't even really notice that this had technical reasons beyond just artistic ones. The other thing you might be picking up on, especially if you're a frame rate snob like me, is the tight and low frame rate. This game renders at 24 frames per second, which again is the standard, or was the standard for decades and decades in Hollywood for film. And it goes back to the early 1900s when they were filming on actual film, physical film, and they wanted to make sure they could save as much money as possible. So they tested what the lowest possible frame rate per second was that would still result in what we would interpret as smooth motion, and they found that to be 24 frames per second, so they just used that. We got used to the 24 frames per second, and now whenever we see something with 24 frames, we immediately think cinematic, and it has to do with how motion carries through the frame. Because of the 180 rule of exposure, it means that the motion blur is always going to be consistent when you film at 24 frames a second. So there's a lot of reasons why it appears as cinematic, but that's all beside the point. The point is, this game does the same thing, which is why this game feels like you're playing a movie, but also why people thought that it was egregious that they were charging full price for it. You see, back in 2015 when this game launched, the centerpiece of discussion in the industry were agreed on a corporate level. It was this disregard for technical quality above and beyond anything else. And The Order 1886 kind of encapsulated everything that people perceived as wrong with the AAA game development industry. Charging a lot for a small game, focusing on cinematic quality above gameplay, and in many ways, to put it simply, just focusing on style over substance. And that definitely is the case here. The Order 1886 doesn't have any significant or memorable gameplay systems. The shooting is pretty lackluster, and most of the levels are like this, where you're simply walking slowly through city streets, squeezing through tight corridors. It transitions into a scripted cutscene and then right back into gameplay. It's just simply not what people thought they should be getting for $60 back in 2015, and it created a big stir. And to be clear, I think I need to make my stance transparent on this topic. I think The Order 1886 is in a lot of ways a bad game, but as a narrative experience, it's pretty interesting and even remarkable. I think it's a fascinating world that they've built here with steampunk mixed with Victorian art styles. It checks all my boxes. I love this setup for a game. But above and beyond everything else, it really does just feel like a tech demo for a game that never came out. And that's really disappointing because I think if they were able to take their time and really make the most of the tech that they developed for this, we could have had one of the most impressive narrative games probably in the history of PlayStation with the sequel to The Order 1886. But because this game launched when it did, for the price that it did, it just never stood a chance. And speaking of the developers, what happened to them? Well, this game was developed by Ready at Dawn, and Ready at Dawn is actually a team that was comprised of a lot of Sony Santa Monica veterans, the same guys that would go on to create the God of War remake and God of War Ragnarok, of course, which is coming out soon. But after the failure of The Order 1886, there was a ton of drama that went down. I did a breakdown of everything that happened in a separate video essay that I made like last year. I'll have that linked in the description box below if you want to hear me go into more depth with the development and creation of this game. But all you really need to know is that because this game was received so poorly when it launched, they didn't stand a chance. They ended up having a ton of talent leave. They were bought out by Oculus, which was then bought out by Facebook, which is now Meta. And it's just a long story, but all told, they're just simply no longer a thing. And so even if we wanted to see a sequel, I don't think we would ever see it. I mean, props to them. These guys are now developing like the Lone Echo series for VR through Oculus. So they're doing good work, but if you were expecting or hoping them to come back and do another exclusive for PlayStation, it's just not gonna happen. It literally can't. Maybe PlayStation owns the rights to The Order 1886 and they could do a sequel with another team if they wanted, but I find it highly unlikely. Again, especially just because this game wasn't exactly received tremendously well, so it's unlikely that they think that this is the game that they should put millions and millions and millions of dollars into. But part of the reason that I find this game just so memorable and yet haunting and disappointing is because it had so much potential. The world building, everything is just tremendous. And it's one of the most memorable games from 2015 for me. Like, it's right up there with Bloodborne and The Witcher. I remember this as clear as if it was yesterday. It's crazy. I mean, look at this. This is awesome. It's badass. But let me show you why part of it sucks. For one, it's incredibly dark. It's hard to see what the hell is going on. And part of it is because I have a light shining in my face to record this video. And part of it is also because in terms of gameplay design, it's just not very, it's just not very good. I come over here, I stab the crap out of it. And then he shrinks back down into a human form, and boom. It's pretty cool, but it's just not. Is it $60 good? Probably not. Probably not. Shoot, shoot, shoot. Yeah, it's hard to even tell what's going on. And then he runs back. I remember this sequence from back in the day, because it is just like this for a solid 5 minutes. It's pretty bad. Yeah, same exact thing. Stab him, and then we move on. And we just rinse and repeat. So to put it simply, I get why this game didn't receive a sequel. I get why it was received poorly. The gameplay isn't very good. They're charging a lot. The story, even though it's really interesting and the world building is great, it's just not very long and doesn't contain enough content to really justify the big price tag. I get all of that, but I still am frustrated and just really disappointed that they didn't get the chance to make a sequel, because I think that that could have been one of the biggest and most impressive, narratively speaking, games of PlayStation's roster, but instead, because they screwed up this initial outing, they just never stood a chance, and they're not going to get the chance to do it right ever again. It's just going to drift off into obscurity in the annals of gaming history, and it'll only be shown off in videos like this where fanboys look back and wonder what might have been. I will say, for those of you who have never seen or played this game before, it's not worth $60, but you can get it for like $5, or in one case I even saw it listed for $1.50 at GameStop or Game in the UK, pretty much any used game dealer. So if you have some time to spare over the course of a weekend and you're just looking for something kind of fun to try, I would actually recommend giving this a shot. I'm doing Morse code real quick. How cool is that? That's kind of fun. Because again, going back to the value proposition idea, $60 for 7 hours of kind of crappy gameplay, but really interesting narrative, set pieces, and visuals. That's a bit of a stretch. But like for $5, for $1.50, hells yes. And like I said, there's some really cool set pieces in the game, like this one where we are rappelling down the side of a blimp a mile in the air above London. It's just badass and cool. I have this clip recorded from the video I mentioned earlier that I did on the game, where I played through the whole thing and we did like a mini critique of it. Again, links in the description box below the like button. But again, I love these high production value cinematic games. I just think they're so cool. And it's a big bummer that this game didn't get the chance to really shine, and they didn't get a chance to really show what this formula could look like in a sequel. It depresses me to no end that we'll never get to see what that looks like. But what we have here is still pretty good, and while it's nothing to write home about and it's not going to win any Game of the Year awards, it's still really, really solid. And again, if you can get this on sale for like $5-10, absolutely it's worth your time, I think, at least. But you know what? I want to hear what you think of The Order 1886. If you think this game deserves a sequel, if you would play it if they ever came out with that, or if you think it's best just left in the past and that we all just move on. And of course, also, if you have any suggestions for games that are sort of similar to this that I would probably enjoy, please let me know in the comment section. I'll make a video on them. I'm always looking for cinematic, narrative, gritty, dark games. I love them dearly. And if you have any recommendations, I would love to hear them, really. Also, while he transforms into a werewolf, head over to Twitch right now. Join me, say hi. I'm live whenever I launch these videos on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So come over there, say hi. I would love to see you. We play games like this. We film videos like this live. It's a great time. So come over and say hi. But that's going to do it for my Order 1886 fangirling. I'm going to leave it there. I appreciate the crap out of you guys for sticking with me and watching me through all of these videos and everything that we do here, for joining me over on Twitch. I'm incredibly grateful. I don't deserve you guys. I don't say it enough, and I just want you to know that I really do appreciate you. I only get to do this because you guys watch, and the fact that you guys do watch still boggles my mind. Like, I just feel like I'm some weird teenager sitting in his mom's basement recording videos, and the idea that anybody watches them is baffling and very humbling. And then I look up and I realize, like, we're approaching 300,000 subs, and this is my full-time job, and it allows me to support my wife and my newborn son, who just turned a year old on the day that this is going live, so I guess he's not newborn anymore. But all of that to say, I owe all of this to you guys. So really, thank you for watching, for subscribing, for sharing these videos with your friends when you think they need a wake-up call or whatever else. I appreciate you. But with that, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for watching. I love you all more than you could possibly know, and I'll see you in the next video or over on Twitch. See you there. Bye-bye.